Hi, Ted Wright from Epic Archaeology. Today we're going to talk about the archaeology of the Book of Mormon. Sometime in the early 1800s, Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism, came upon a very interesting papyrus manuscript that he found from a traveling mummy exhibit here in America. And he purchased the papyrus and he took it home and he saw something very interesting, and he began to translate this papyrus manuscript into a book. And in 1835, Smith published the book, eventually called the Book of Abraham. In 1880, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints canonized the book, and it became part of something called the Pearl of Great Price. In this book, Smith believed that he had translated a message directly from the Biblical Patriarch Abraham, who actually wrote the papyrus in his own hand. Now, unfortunately, in 1871, many people believe that the manuscript was lost in the Great Fire of Chicago. But in 1966, parts of the manuscript, fragments of the manuscript, turned up in the archives of the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, and also in the archives of the Latter-day Saints. So how does this manuscript, or how does Smith's translation of this papyrus manuscript turn up? Since then, scholars have looked at this manuscript and read it and read the hieroglyphics of it. And so what I would like to do now is to give you a brief evaluation based on what we know of Egyptology and hieroglyphics. According to historian Andrew Robinson, the use of hieroglyphics and the reading of hieroglyphics really waned away in around the year AD 394. But in 1799, something very interesting happened. The French leader Napoleon Bonaparte, on his campaign in Egypt, was reinforcing an ancient Mameluke fort called Fort Julien in 1799. And one of his lieutenants actually discovered a very large stone and excavated it and brought it back to France. That stone is now known as the Rosetta Stone. A big race ensued between England and France as to who was going to decipher the Rosetta Stone. It wasn't until the 1820s until a brilliant British polymath by the name of Thomas Young, and eventually Jean-François Champollion, the French scholar, translated the Rosetta Stone. Now, in the stone, there are three languages. There's Greek, and then there's a language called Demotic, and then there's a third language called hieroglyphics. And this stone helped scholars to unlock how to read hieroglyphics. And as they began to unlock and unpack the secrets of ancient Egypt, scholars were then able to read all of the inscriptions found in the pyramids and on palace walls and in tombs and in various parts of Egypt and some of the artifacts that we discover in Egypt. Unfortunately for Joseph Smith, as Egyptologists began to look at this supposed translation of the Book of Abraham, the translation has no resemblance whatsoever to reality.
The image on the screen is the actual Abraham papyrus that was purchased by Joseph Smith, and according to Smith's own translation of this text, he says that it shows an Egyptian priest attempting to sacrifice Abraham, not Isaac, but Abraham. Egyptologists around the world now recognize this text as a scene from an Egyptian funerary text called the Egyptian Book of the Dead that was used by Egyptian priests. The entire text and the scene itself is now widely recognized by Egyptologists around the world as an Egyptian priest preparing the body of the pharaoh for his ba, or his soul's journey in the afterlife. If you want to know more scholarly detail on Smith's alleged translation, then you should definitely consult the book, The Joseph Smith Egyptian Papyri by Egyptologist Robert Rittner, who is an Egyptologist at the University of Chicago's Oriental Institute.
So I'd like to leave you with three thoughts in closing about Joseph Smith's Book of Abraham. Number one, I wonder why in the world would this very important manuscript from Abraham end up in a traveling mummy exhibit in the first place? How did it get there? Now, obviously, if you know Mormon history, you'll understand why that is the case, and we're going to do another video on that perhaps later. The translation, supposed translation from Joseph Smith, fits no known reading of hieroglyphics whatsoever. It is completely made up. It has no basis in reality whatsoever. And number three is sort of a related point, and that is this. Smith's translation, or supposed translation, of this Egyptian papyrus would be the equivalent of someone finding J.R.R. Tolkien's book or manuscript, The Hobbit, and saying that it is a history of the American president George Washington. There is no basis in reality whatsoever between the story of George Washington and the story of Bilbo Baggins. It's completely made up. So this is about the same thing as Joseph Smith translating these papyri manuscripts into the story that he thinks he has discovered. So if you are a practicing Mormon, or if you're someone who is searching, we would encourage you to investigate the Bible, investigate documents, and see if there's evidence for them. At Epic Archaeology, we believe that the Bible has got very strong historical and archaeological evidence that supports the message of the Bible. The Book of Mormon, on the other hand, there is no archaeological evidence or historical evidence whatsoever to support the message of Mormonism. If you want to know more about this, check our website out at epicarchaeology.org, and thank you for watching.